all the people need to have the opportunity to be evacuated. So if you have the venue for 1,000 people, you need to have the bomb shelter for 1,000 people right next to it.
So, welcome back to the Open Muse podcast. I'm your host, Mark Adam Harold, and today we've got a special edition because we're going to be talking about the world of music in Ukraine with the awesome Alona. Hi, Alona.
Hi, Mark.
Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you are and what you do?
Yeah, gladly. So my name is Alona Dmukhovska. I'm the co-founder and head of Music Expert Ukraine, and we call ourselves the Independent Initiative, which helps Ukrainian artists to build international career. And actually, we're doing quite a lot, even though we are independent NGO, but we're working with non-formal education in Ukraine, for instance, because before we do the expert, we need to build the background and foundations at home. So the managers and artists can actually understand how to use all the international opportunities, how to build the network, how actually the music business works. Besides that, we are also working with collaborations of different types of artistic and managers collaborations. The most basic might be, songwriting camps, because this is where the understanding and connections between artists are built at the first place, and this is the most basic but also much needed connection between them. Also, we represent Ukrainian artists at showcases, so we want to make sure that Ukrainian music is presented in line with the rest of the world. It has potential, connections, nice management background. So we try to represent them as much as possible and help them to prepare to all those important events. Last but not least, also interestingly, we're doing a little bit of advocacy in Ukraine and doing research of music industry in Ukraine, because when you talk to policymakers, they like numbers. They need to understand what we are talking about, and this is where actually we are connected in the framework of Open Muse project, but also beside that a lot.
There's a lot of music export offices around the world. But is there anything you have to do differently in Ukraine? Because obviously the situation in Ukraine is not so good. And I guess that's going to be presenting you some extra challenges. So how's Music Export Ukraine different from a normal export office?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting because we were founded by two crazy Ukrainian ladies that we just cannot do it. We wanted to do like the export, and we were already, me and my colleague Dartia, we were working internationally for some time already, and we were all the time talking to international colleagues. Hey, we have these big bands, we have this great scene in Ukraine, we have these talents, and we were all the time surprised why other people don't really know it, like foreign colleagues, even from Poland, even from Czechia. It's so close, but we are so far away from each other. So we were all the time like trying to explain, hey, we have these talents, meet them, come to Ukraine. We have a great electronic scene and we have metal music and here and there. Step by step, we understood that we need to do something more on the institutional level because we were repeating ourselves from year to year. And in 2018, we just understood, okay, so if this structure as music expert is not existing in Ukraine, Ukrainians usually do it by ourselves. This is how we've founded our NGO, and I would say the first couple of years, we were learning by doing how everything works, because there is no such a book like building an export office in Europe. And we were talking to colleagues from different countries, from Initiative Music in Germany, from the export office in France, because I would say among the first ones, and then the smaller countries, and then the bigger countries. And we were trying to understand what type of structure we might have and what type of activities we need to do. And I would say we still kind of like a unique export office because we are still an NGO, which is good and bad. Good because we are super flexible and proactive in terms of the projects we may want to do. The artists we are working with, and our reaction is much faster than like government institutions. But it's also bad because we don't have the state funding. That means that we have to be very proactive fundraising for our project, building partnerships internationally. So we are still quite unique, but we are happy that even despite of this instability, I would say, we still managed to build really good representation of the Ukrainian artists on the international scene over the last couple of years. Also, we are a member of EMEE, which is a European Music Exporters Exchange, the only one association of export offices in Europe in general, I would say, which is hugely supported by the EU and trusted. And we learn a lot from our colleagues, but we hope that they learn a lot from our flexibility and creativity, I would say, as well.
So you said you don't get any government funding. Is that because the government's not interested, or because they don't have the money at this time? I remember there's a famous quotation from Churchill when somebody suggested cutting culture funding during the war in the UK, and he said, "We're not cutting that because if we cut out culture, then what are we fighting for?" So is it a similar attitude in Ukraine? Do you think you might be getting some government funding soon, or is it just they're not interested at all?
I would be honest over here because the situation was never good for culture and music in particular in Ukraine, and now it's definitely not the case at all. Because economically, it's pretty hard to keep on working in creative industries in Ukraine in general, because the fluctuation of the currency is crazy, inflation is crazy, and actually when you're working, and even when you are not working, it's socially acceptable that every single person is responsible for helping with the military forces of Ukraine, because actually we are all still alive and can record music and do events only because of our fighters at the front line. They protect us at the moment, and we need to support them as well. So every surplus which goes in every project most probably will end up as the donation to the military forces of Ukraine. So I would say, unfortunately, in general, there's no much money for culture and music in particular in Ukraine at the moment. There is a state institution in Ukraine called Ukrainian Institute, which aims to promote Ukrainian art worldwide. This is kind of like equivalent of British Council or Goethe Institute in other countries. So they are pretty broad. They have some state funding, but it's less and less every year because of obvious reasons. And we are working with them as delivery partner for popular music, I would say. We are not working with the classical music, but with the popular music, yes, because they are working very wide. They are working with cinema, theater, visual arts, music, including. And at this moment, we have very deep expertise in popular music, nice connections, qualifications, all these partnerships on the European and I would say international level already. So we complement each other here pretty nicely, that the government institution which supports arts in general, and we as the export office supporting and promoting popular music in general. So this is where we collaborate. But also the big challenge for the Ukrainian music is that we're still invisible in the state statistics, and it's not something unique for Ukraine. It's already the problem for many years in other countries as well, that music is hugely dependent on micro businesses and freelancers, meaning we are not really visible as the big factory or something, which can be easily counted. And this is what we have our motivation to cooperate on Open Muse project as well, to make us a little bit more visible in those state statistics and numbers where we belong. And this is where we can highlight our value as well. And this is still a long way to go, I would say, proving that we need to have the support.
Okay, so you mentioned economic, and then there's statistics as well. So how else is the war affecting the music scene in Ukraine, in different areas of Ukraine? And I guess people imagine that there's a lot of disruption from air raids and bombs. But how's the music system and the music scene carrying on?
When talking about the war effect, there are two subsectors of music industry: recording industry and live industry. Recording, strangely, growing year over year because we have more subscriptions, we have more music listeners, and in general it's very positively to see that possibly the cost of subscription to Spotify or Apple Music is not that critical yet, that we don't see that people unsubscribe from legal streaming platforms. So that means that music means something to them and they need that. So that is the positive thing. In terms of live industry, the situation is more complex, obviously, because you have to be present, you have to be in the venue, you have to have the artists who are playing, you need to sell the tickets, you need to have the audience. So it's very complex situation at the moment because on one hand, we have less competition from foreign acts because they simply don't come to Ukraine now. That means that we have more attention to the Ukrainian artists themselves. And just recently I was writing the article to IQ magazine, which is kind of like well-known UK live industry analytical media, I would say. And I was telling about some success stories of the last year. For instance, we have this great lady called Claudia Petrivna, which is a new Ukrainian emerging artist who over the last 2 years was kind of like incognito. Nobody knew who was behind these songs and this persona. She was kind of like Ukrainian gorillas, I would say. And she went viral. She went crazy popular. Every single person knew her songs because of deep lyrics, of really close topics to each one of us. And she just sold out 2 arenas in Kiev last August, selling 16,000 tickets over 2 nights. And she opened her face, she was playing with the band. That means that even new names can grow over the last couple of years despite everything and be extremely popular. And the brightest example was most probably from the Ukrainian rock band called Okean Elzy, who sold out 5 arenas in a row. Like, it's crazy. Not even like European acts can do it that at their domestic markets. But the band was celebrating 30th anniversary of their work. And yeah, they sold 10,000 tickets each night over 5 days. It was crazy. That means that people are hungry for music. It's not only also because of having fun, but mentally to stay sane. And the most important, that every single event in Ukraine has the charity component now. So it's not only listening to music and seeing your favorite bands, but also doing something good together, having this spirit of unity and having some money to help.
But what's the law? You're allowed to have 16,000 people together? Like, what time are you allowed to do it?
So the security measures are extreme, obviously, and the event took place in Kyiv Palace of Sports. So this is the biggest arena in Ukraine, 10,000 capacity each night, I would say, and you have to be prepared for everything, unfortunately. So while choosing the venue for the concert, you need to understand where is the nearest bomb shelter. Because in case we have this like online application which alarms you about type of danger we might have. So if like the drone is flying in your direction, that is one type of danger. If ballistic rocket, that's totally another type of danger. So this is the responsibility of the promoter to take all of that into consideration. And in case of alarm siren, all the people within minutes need to have the opportunity to be evacuated. So if you have the venue for 1,000 people, you need to have the bomb shelter for 1,000 people right next to it. And actually, during the fifth concert of Okean Elzy, I think the alarm siren was working and there was a danger. And luckily, there is a big subway station called Palace of Sport next to the venue, and all the people could be evacuated over there. And actually the artists also went to the subway and continued a concert in an acoustic version to support everybody and show that actually we need to keep going. So everybody are super flexible and prepared to every single situation in terms of moving people, preparing artists, doing the proper announcement and notification what we're doing the next 5 minutes. We still have enough time to be back home for the curfew because all the teams, the whole like venue, all the technicians, they should be home until 12 because of the curfew around Ukraine in general. So there are some tips and tricks how to make it workable, strangely enough.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've had a long time to get used to it. Which is not good. But you mentioned, that sounds almost impossible, as I've promoted some live events before, and it was difficult enough doing 1,000 people in peacetime, but I don't think I would even try and do a live event under those conditions. So you said that that's maybe leading to some increase in recorded music. And at Open Muse, we're doing a lot of stuff about fair payment for musicians. So I want to ask, are the people that are streaming music listening to a lot of Ukrainian music, and are the Ukrainians actually getting the money back from the international system?
So let me frame it, not even frame it, but there are a couple of very important nuances over here. Ukraine is still, according to the international classification, unmatured market. So I would say the latest numbers which I've seen, that the penetration of streaming in Ukraine is 5%, when Germany, US, Sweden, it's more than 50%, I believe. So that means that we are just on the developing stage, and that means that there's not much money made in Ukraine from streaming yet. And also they use the localization of the prices. And for instance, I'm paying €5 for the single plan for Spotify, but the European prices, I would say, in terms of volume of money on the Ukrainian market, there are still limitations, but also the opportunity to grow. But you're totally right that possibly streaming platforms, and actually all the DSPs, because some social media can also be counted as the streaming now, they are the most reliable income stream for Ukrainian artists over the last couple of years, because you simply cannot really rely on the concerts and tours. On one hand, because the geography of tours is much smaller now, because normally the concerts are happening in central and western Ukraine, where the security is a little bit better. But also you cannot really rely on concerts, because even if you have any surplus of income, you will probably donate that to military forces. So it's more about keeping the economy growing and supporting the teams who are working with the artists rather than like earning or even invest in something in your art. So streaming platforms are super important in terms of this income streams diversification, because indeed the attention to Ukrainian music is much higher at the moment. Also, there is this trend of developing international genres on the local market in local language. I think it's not unique for Ukraine only, but I don't know, Poland, Germany, France, everybody are listening to local music in the local language, and it's getting more and more popular. This is also the case in Ukraine. So yeah, I would say we rely hugely on the digital market, but also trying to keep on with the concerts as well.
And you interesting. You mentioned other channels, not just, we're always talking about Spotify, maybe about YouTube. Is there any channels that are more specific for Ukraine or more useful for Ukrainian musicians? Are people making all their money on Twitch and they're not even on Spotify, or is it roughly the same as everywhere else in Europe?
Yeah, so on the one hand, top 3 platforms in Ukraine is YouTube Music number 1. It's way bigger than the rest of the platforms. I think this is also not only because young people are listening, like young teenagers, 10, 12 years, they're not paying for streaming platforms yet. That's why YouTube is for free, so they are listening music there. But also, for instance, the generation of my mom, they're also big fans of YouTube because they can watch all those concerts of their favorite artists there. And I would say this is also the cultural thing that they didn't get used to pay for something in the internet because it should be for free. So YouTube kind of like covers all those needs. But Spotify, Apple Music is also super important for artists, definitely. And especially on Spotify, even though it's platform number 3 in Ukraine, but there are some really big success cases of Ukrainian artists starting from post-punk, I would say. For instance, we have this guy, Set Svit. The guy, he's 19 now, I think. He was among the most viral artists over the last couple of years, and he has like a really decent income of having 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify only. And also there is this interesting genre called funk, which is super huge on Spotify. And normally these are children of 13, 14, 15 years old sitting in their bedrooms writing really heavy dance electronic, having millions of monthly listeners all over the world. And yeah, I would say this is where we have a lot of success stories, and I hope that we'll have more and more of them. And yeah, social media, Instagram, Facebook is also huge. Obviously TikTok, but they are not paying that much at all. But Facebook is still the thing in Ukraine, especially because of all the geopolitical instability, and we need to discuss it somehow. And usually it's discussed on Facebook, but also music is there, and the huge audience is there for our music.
Okay, well, I mean, I only have one more question, but because we're running out of time, although I have 10 more questions I really want to ask, but I'm going to choose one because we were talking about culture and wartime earlier, and I'm really interested to know, you mentioned that Ukrainian music is more popular now. I know, for example, I was trying to find some songs for my daughter, and I was scrolling through Yoto Player, which is another platform, and I found Ukrainian children's songs that were recorded in Ukrainian. There's some Ukrainians living in the UK that were doing this, and now my daughter is singing in Ukrainian. So do you think there's some optimism for the future that more people are going to know about Ukrainian culture, and when all of the bad stuff is over, you're going to be in a good position to grow and to show people what you've got?
Yeah, so this is part of my job as well, to make it to make Ukrainian music as popular as possible. So if any of the listeners of this podcast have any questions or ideas, just type Music Expert Ukraine and write us the email. We would be happy to send you the link to the coolest music. We haven't had the children's songs yet, but I will do one after our talk now. And we would be happy to connect you to respective people in Ukraine, for instance, promoters or artists or any type of collaboration you might think of. We would be happy to facilitate that communication. And actually, the biggest dream which I have at the moment is that for years to come, international colleagues, musicians, managers, all this infrastructure around will have the Ukrainian component in their project, in their concert, in their mind in general. Because first, this is the right thing to do in these stormy times we are living in. But also this is the opportunity to involve really creative and active spirit, have super non-standard talent. This is what I hear all the time from the European colleagues. Oh my God, how are you doing that? Well, if you would like to have the risk manager in your project involve Ukrainians, we know how to handle stuff. And you might have really non-standard situations in the future. And we would really nicely complement European resources, I would say, experience, history with some fresh ideas and challenges. And I call it also the quota for justice. Sometimes it may look artificial now, but this is the right thing to do, to have the Ukrainian component. Sometimes it's harder because, even if you are hiring Ukrainian manager or would like to have the Ukrainian artist playing at your event, for instance, we have some difficulties leaving the country because men are militarily obliged, so they need to apply with tons of documents all the time when they're going abroad, and sometimes they don't get this permission to leave the country. So we need to substitute man bans with the female acts, and there are a lot of struggles inside of the country as well, but this is the quota for justice. And also, what is the most important is that we protect ourselves by ourselves. Ukraine is covering the whole Europe at the moment, but we need to work on the security together, because if Ukraine falls, the whole Europe will fall. So the success of Ukrainian music is strangely also relied on the European decision to take the stand and help us protect all of us. So this is the positive thinking I have at the moment.
Yeah, we all hope it's going to go that way, and I'm sure that not only rebuilding all of the infrastructure and all the buildings that have been destroyed, but rebuilding the music industry and using the music industry to help rebuilding, I think is going to be a really interesting opportunity as soon as all of this nonsense is over. So before I get a little bit angry thinking about that guy and how he has stopped my favorite country's music industry growing, I'm going to say goodbye on an optimistic note, Alona. Thank you very much for telling us some good news. And thanks for letting us know what's different about what's going on in Ukraine.